The grand hall of the eternal throne stretched before me like the belly of some vast, ancient beast. I am Veshkali, fourth speaker of the Galactic Congress, and I had witnessed countless species beg for mercy in this very chamber. Today, however, would be different. Today, I would learn what true fear meant. The human stood in the center of the prosecution circle, head bowed, hands clasped behind his back. His name was Daniel Cross, and he looked utterly unremarkable. Short brown hair, average height, wearing the standard gray uniform of a merchant vessel captain. Nothing about him suggested he was anything more than another insignificant member of a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 cycles ago. Emperor Krath'nor sat upon his obsidian throne, all four of his arms resting on the carved armrests, his golden eyes gleaming with undisguised contempt. The Emperor was a Solthari, a species that had ruled the eastern quadrant for over 10,000 cycles. His scales shimmered purple and black in the artificial light, and his massive frame made the already enormous throne seem almost modest. "So," Krath'nor's voice boomed across the chamber, carrying that distinctive hiss that all Solthari possessed, "this is what humanity sends to negotiate their surrender. A merchant, how perfectly fitting for a species of shopkeepers and scavengers." A ripple of laughter spread through the assembled delegates. The Vetzarian ambassador actually slapped his knee with one of his 6 appendages. Even I felt my mandibles twitch in what might have been amusement. Humans had been causing minor inconveniences throughout the outer territories for months now, refusing to pay the standard tribute taxes, harboring refugees from conquered worlds, generally being stubborn about accepting their place in the natural order of things. Daniel Cross did not move, did not speak, did not even raise his head. "Did you hear me, human?" Krath'nor leaned forward, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Or are your primitive auditory organs malfunctioning? Perhaps your species needs another demonstration of what happens to those who defy the eternal empire." Still, the human remained silent. His breathing was steady, too steady. I made a note of that in my data recorder. Most species showed signs of distress when standing before the Emperor. Elevated respiratory rates, increased thermal signatures, pheromone shifts. This human displayed none of these tells. Krath'nor's expression darkened. He gestured with his upper right hand, and the massive holographic display behind him flickered to life. Images of burning space stations filled the air, the remains of the human colony on Epsilon 7. 3,000 humans had lived there before the Emperor decided to make an example of their refusal to pay tribute. "Do you see this, Daniel Cross?" Krath'nor pronounced the name like a curse. "This is what remains of your defiance. 3,000 of your kind, reduced to ash and memory. And still, you stand before me in silence. Are you stupid, human, or merely suicidal?" The images cycled through scenes of destruction, ships torn apart, habitats cracked open to the void. The cold mathematics of overwhelming military superiority made manifest. The Solthari Empire commanded a fleet of over 50,000 warships. Humanity barely had 200 vessels that could be called military grade, most of them retrofitted cargo haulers with particle cannons bolted onto their hulls. Finally, Daniel Cross spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried perfectly in the acoustically designed chamber. "I see them." Krath'nor's eyes narrowed. "And, do you have words of apology? Pleas for mercy? Your species is outnumbered, outgunned, and utterly without hope. The only question that remains is how quickly you wish to die. Complete, immediate surrender, and I will make your extinction swift. Continue this foolish resistance, and I will ensure that humanity's last days are filled with such suffering that your name becomes a cautionary tale told to frightened children across 1,000 worlds." The human raised his head then, and I got my first clear look at his face. He was younger than I had initially assessed, perhaps only 30 cycles by human reckoning. His eyes were gray, the color of neutronium steel, and there was something in his expression that made my translation nodes momentarily glitch. It was not fear. It was not desperation. It was pity. "You really do not understand, do you?" Daniel said, and there was a strange quality to his voice. Not quite amusement, not quite sadness, something in between that my species had no word for. Krath'nor's scales flushed a deeper purple, a clear sign of rising anger among the Solthari. "What do I not understand, insect? Please, enlighten me. Tell me what great wisdom your infant civilization possesses that 10,000 cycles of Solthari dominance has failed to teach me." The human took a slow breath. released it. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and clear. You think you know what humans are. You have seen our colonies, our merchant ships, our small defense fleet. You have calculated the odds and found them overwhelmingly in your favor. And by every rational measure of military power, you are correct. The Salthari Empire could crush humanity in a direct conflict. Then why, Krath'nor said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, are you wasting my time? Because, Daniel said, and now I definitely detected something like amusement in his tone, you have made one critical error in your assessment. You think we are like the other species you have conquered. You think we will behave according to the logical patterns your analysts have predicted. You think that faced with overwhelming force, we will do the reasonable thing and surrender. And you will not. Krath'nor's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Then you will die. Simple as that. We will probably die, Daniel agreed. Most of us anyway, but here is what you have failed to understand about humanity, Emperor. We are not reasonable. We have never been reasonable. Our entire history is a litany of refusing to accept the logical outcome, of looking at impossible odds and saying not today, of taking you cannot win as a personal challenge rather than a statement of fact. I felt a strange chill run through my thermal regulation system. There was something in the human's voice now. Something cold and certain and utterly alien to the normal patterns of negotiation. Krath'nor, however, only laughed harder. Bravado! How quaint! Tell me, Daniel Cross, do you know how many species have stood where you stand? How many have proclaimed their determination to resist? How many have sworn they would rather die than submit? All of them, I would imagine, Daniel said. And all of them were reasonable in the end. They did the math. They calculated the cost. They weighed the survival of their species against the price of pride, and they chose survival. Yes, Krath'nor slapped his throne with one massive hand. Yes, exactly, because they were rational, because they understood the fundamental truth of the universe. The strong dominate the weak. That is the way of all things. Not all things, Daniel said quietly. Not humans. The Emperor's amusement faded. You truly believe your species is special, that you are somehow exempt from the laws that govern all sentient life. Not special, Daniel said. Just different. You want to know what makes humans different, Emperor? I will tell you. We are spite. We are vindictiveness elevated to an art form. We are the species that looked at the natural world and said not good enough. We are the species that took fire from lightning and turned it into a tool. We are the species that saw mountains and decided to move them. We are the species that looked at the sky and refused to accept that we could not fly. He paused, and his gray eyes locked onto Krath'nor's golden ones. We are the species that, when told we could not possibly win, found a way to make sure you could not possibly enjoy winning. A silence fell over the chamber. I watched the Emperor's expression shift from amusement to confusion to something that might have been the first stirrings of concern. Threats? Krath'nor said. You come here and threaten me? Not threats, Daniel said. Fair warning. You attacked Epsilon 7. You killed 3,000 civilians. Men, women, children. You expected us to surrender. Instead, you have awakened something that I genuinely wish you had left sleeping. And what is that? Krath'nor's voice dripped with sarcasm. Humanity's capacity for grudges, Daniel said. You see, Emperor, most species fight for territory, for resources, for logical, rational reasons. Humans fight for those things too. But we also fight for what you would call irrational reasons. We fight because someone insulted our flag. We fight because someone hurt our feelings. We fight because, and this is important, you made it personal. I leaned forward in my observation seat. This was unprecedented. No species facing the Salthari had ever spoken with such calm certainty before. You killed 3,000 humans on Epsilon 7. Daniel continued. Do you know what that means? It means 3,000 families now have empty seats at their tables. 3,000 sets of parents lost children. 3,000 lovers will never see their partners again. You have given every single human in the galaxy a personal reason to hate you. And we are very, very good at hate. Krath'nor's scales rippled with barely contained rage. You dare speak to me of hate? I will show you what hate truly means. I will burn your worlds one by one. I will tear apart your ships. I will hunt down every last human in the galaxy and I will make them watch as I exterminate their species. Yes, Daniel said, and now he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Yes, do exactly that. Please. Because every world you burn, every ship you destroy, every human you kill, you will be proving me right. You will be showing the entire galaxy exactly what happens when you push humanity too far. And some of us will survive, Emperor. Some of us always survive. We are like vermin that way. Stubborn. Hard to kill. Persistent. I will find them all, Krath'nor snarled. You will try, Daniel agreed. And you will fail. Because while you are hunting us, we will be adapting, learning, evolving. That is what humans do. We look at the thing that is killing us, and we figure out how to kill it back. You have better ships? We will build better weapons. You have more soldiers? We will fight smarter. You have 10,000 cycles of military tradition. We have 10,000 cycles of being the species that refused to go extinct despite every predator, disease and environmental disaster our homeworld could throw at us. The human took a step forward. Just one step, but several of the guards tensed, hands moving to their weapons. Let me paint you a picture of your future, Emperor Krath'nor. You are going to win many battles. You are going to kill many humans. You are going to look at the casualty reports and think you are succeeding. And then, one day, one of your fleets is not going to report back, and you will send another fleet to investigate, and they will find wreckage. Solthari wreckage. And you will wonder, how did they do that? And then it will happen again, and again, and each time you will lose more ships, more soldiers, more resources. He paused, and his voice dropped to almost a whisper, but somehow it still filled the entire chamber. And the whole time, we will be learning how you think, how you fight, how you bleed. And eventually, whether it takes 10 cycles or 100 or 1,000, we will figure out how to kill you. All of you. Because that is what humans do when you make it personal. We do not stop. We do not forget. We do not forgive. We just keep coming. Keep adapting. Keep finding new ways to make you regret that you ever heard the word human. Emperor Krath'nor stood from his throne, his massive frame towering over the human. You think your little speech frightens me? You think your bravado changes anything? I have heard the death threats of 1,000 species. I have watched civilizations beg and plead and promise vengeance. And where are they now? Gone. Extinct. Forgotten. Then make us the 1,001st, Daniel said. Go ahead. Try to exterminate us. But know this, Emperor. When you fail, when some fragment of humanity survives your best efforts, we will remember. We will remember. Epsilon 7. We will remember. This moment. We will remember. Every single one of our dead. And we will make you pay for each and every one of them. The Emperor's hand moved to the control panel on his throne. I grow tired of this conversation. Guards, take him to the execution chamber. I want his death broadcast across every human colony. Let them see what happens to those who defy me. The guards moved forward, but Daniel did not resist. He simply kept his eyes locked on Krath'nor as they seized his arms. One more thing, Emperor, Daniel said as they began to drag him away. What? Krath'nor snarled. I need you to understand something. I am not here to negotiate. I am not here to plead for mercy. I am not even here to threaten you, despite how it might sound. I am here to serve you notice, official notice, as required by Human Treaty Law 7 Gamma, regarding crimes against civilian populations. A strange feeling crept through my sensory apparatus. Treaty Law 7 Gamma. I accessed my database. The entry was recent, added to the Galactic Registry only 3 cycles ago. Most species had ignored it as irrelevant posturing from a minor power. The law stated that any species that deliberately targeted human civilian populations would be considered to have declared total war against humanity, and in total war, all human military operations would be conducted under unrestricted warfare protocols. I had read the protocols when they were filed. They had seemed laughably vague. No specific strategies listed. No technological specifications, just a simple statement that humanity reserved the right to use any and all means necessary to achieve victory, without exception, without restraint, without mercy. At the time I had dismissed it as empty rhetoric. Now, watching the human's face as he was dragged toward the execution chamber, I was not so sure. Your treaty laws mean nothing here, Krath'nor said dismissively. They mean everything, Daniel replied. Because now, when the historians write about what happens next, They will know that we warned you, that we gave you every chance to walk away, that we followed our own laws even when you followed none. Historians. Krath'nor laughed. There will be no human historians. Your species will be extinct within 10 cycles. Maybe, Daniel said. And then as the guards reached the chamber door he said something that would haunt my thermal dreams for cycles to come. Or maybe we will be the ones writing your epitaph. The doors closed behind him with a heavy thud. Krath'nor settled back onto his throne, a satisfied expression on his scaled face. Well, he said to the assembled delegates, that was entertaining at least. The human had spirit, I will grant him that. Foolish spirit, but spirit nonetheless. The Vuxian ambassador chittered. Shall we proceed with the invasion timetable, Emperor? Yes. All fleets are to converge on human space, commence with the systematic elimination of their colonies, start with their outer territories and work inward. I want their homeworld saved for last. Let them watch as we devour everything they have built. I should have spoken up then. Should have suggested caution. But I did not. I was fourth speaker, not first, and my role was to record and observe, not to question the Emperor's decisions. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing logistics, fleet compositions, projected casualties. It was all very routine, very organized, very rational. And that I would later realize was the problem. We were applying rational thinking to a species that had just told us, in the clearest possible terms, that they were not rational. The execution was broadcast as the Emperor had ordered. Daniel Cross stood before the firing squad without a blindfold. His last words were recorded and transmitted across every known human settlement. Tell them we could have been friends. Tell them we could have been allies. Tell them they made a choice, and now they will live with the consequences, or die with them. Either way works for us. Then the weapons fired, and Daniel Cross ceased to exist. Krath'nor expected panic among the human colonies. He expected surrender broadcasts. He expected desperate pleas for mercy. What he got instead was silence. Complete, total silence. Every human ship immediately ceased all communication with the Galactic network. Every human colony went dark. Every human trading post closed its doors. It was as if the entire species had collectively taken a breath and held it. Let them hide, Krath'nor said when informed of this development. It will only delay the inevitable. Launch the first wave. The first fleet, Pride of Salthar, entered human space 3 days after Daniel Cross's execution. It was a force of 5,000 warships, enough to crack a planet's crust if properly focused. The fleet was commanded by Admiral Qex'rin, a veteran of 20 conquest campaigns. His orders were simple: locate and destroy the human colony at Forge Station, a major manufacturing center in the outer territories. Intelligence suggested it housed approximately 50,000 humans and produced most of the civilian ships for their expanding merchant fleet. The fleet arrived at Forge Station's coordinates and found it abandoned, not destroyed, not evacuated in panic, just empty. The station was intact, all systems running, but there was not a single life form aboard. Where did they go? Qex'rin demanded. His sensor operators could only shrug, their equivalent appendages moving in confusion. Unknown, Admiral. All ships accounted for in the registry are missing. All personnel gone. It is as if they simply vanished. Search the surrounding systems. It cannot have gone far. A fleet that size leaves traces. The search took 2 days. They found nothing. No ion trails, no debris, no clues whatsoever. 50,000 humans and their entire fleet had simply disappeared. Krath'nor was informed of this development and dismissed it as a temporary setback. They are running. Let them run. We will find them eventually. Proceed to the next target. But the next target was also abandoned. And the one after that, every single human colony on the invasion list had been evacuated, stripped of everything valuable and left as empty shells. This is impossible. Krath'nor raged at his advisors. How did they move so many people so quickly? Our intelligence said they only had 200 ships capable of carrying significant numbers. His intelligence chief, a nervous Caltharian named Pixel, pulled up holographic data. They must have had hidden ships, Emperor. Perhaps their fleet was larger than we suspected. Then where are they hiding? Space is vast, but it is not infinite. We have sensors. We have scouts. Find them. The search expanded. Salthari fleets spread across human territory like a dark wave, sensors sweeping every system, every asteroid field, every nebula. They found abandoned colonies. They found empty space stations. They found nothing else. Nothing alive anyway. 3 weeks after the invasion began, things started to change. The Second Fleet, operating near the human system designated Sierra 3, reported a strange occurrence. One of their scouting frigates had stopped responding to communication. When the fleet moved to investigate, they found the frigate drifting in space, all systems offline. The boarding party found the crew dead. All of them, not killed by weapons fire or decompression. They had simply stopped living. Medical scans showed no obvious cause of death. No toxins, no pathogens, no signs of violence. Their bodies just shut down, as if someone had flipped a switch. Biological weapon, Krath'nor suggested when informed. Possibly, his medical advisor said, but we can find no trace of any infectious agent. No chemical residue. Nothing. It is as if they died of natural causes, all at the same time, which is statistically impossible. Nothing is impossible. Krath'nor snapped. Find out what killed them. But before they could, it happened again. Another ship went dark. Then another. Then 5 at once. The Second Fleet's admiral made the decision to pull back to a more defensive position while they investigated. That was when the attacks began in earnest. Not attacks in the traditional sense, no massive fleet engagements, no dramatic battles, just small surgical strikes that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. A supply convoy would be traveling through normal space when suddenly one of its ships would explode. Not from weapons fire, from some kind of internal detonation, as if something inside the ship had simply decided to stop holding together. A patrol group would be conducting a routine sweep when their sensors would suddenly show massive energy spikes from within their own ships, followed by immediate system failures and hull breaches. A battlecruiser would be maintaining position in orbit when it would inexplicably lose power, drift into the planet's gravity well, and crash onto the surface before anyone could react. The Solthari military command struggled to identify the pattern. There was no pattern. The incidents seemed random, unpredictable, impossible to defend against, and there was never any trace of the attackers. I attended the emergency council meeting where Krath'nor demanded answers from his military leadership. How are they doing this? The Emperor's voice shook the chamber. Where are they? Show me the enemy so I can crush them. Admiral Qex'rin, looking considerably less confident than he had 3 weeks ago, presented his analysis. We believe the humans are using some form of stealth technology we have never encountered. Our sensors detect nothing, but the attacks are too precise to be random system failures. Someone or something is targeting our ships. Then upgrade the sensors, increase security protocols. Do whatever is necessary to find them. We have Emperor. We have implemented every defensive measure in our arsenal. We have tripled patrols, installed new sensor arrays, conducted random inspections, and still the attacks continue. Krath'nor's scales had turned almost black with rage. Then they must have infiltrated our fleet. Saboteurs, check every crew member. Run genetic verification on every single Solthari in the battle group. The checks were conducted. They found nothing. Every crew member was verified as legitimate, with no signs of compromise or coercion. And yet the ships kept dying. One by one, sometimes 2 or 3 per day, never enough to cripple the fleet, but enough to create an atmosphere of creeping dread. Soldiers began to fear their own ships. Officers started seeing threats in every shadow. The mighty Solthari military, conquerors of 100 worlds, found themselves jumping at ghosts. Then the messages started. Not transmitted through normal channels. They just appeared somehow on random displays throughout the fleet. Text only in perfect Solthari script. The first one said, "You killed 3,000 of us. We have killed 473 of you. 2,527 to go." Krath'nor dismissed it as psychological warfare. Crude but effective, he admitted, but ultimately meaningless. Numbers on a screen could not change the fundamental reality that humanity was outnumbered and outgunned. The second message appeared 1 week later. "You killed 3,000 of us. We have killed 912 of you. 2,088 to go." The death toll was accurate. Krath'nor had checked it himself. 912 Solthari soldiers and crew members had died in the unexplained incidents. The number matched perfectly. That was when he began to feel something he had not experienced in centuries. Something he had forgotten even existed in his emotional range. It was not quite fear, not yet, but it was close. It was the recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, the human had been telling the truth. Perhaps humanity really was different. Perhaps they really were not bound by the rational rules that governed every other species. Perhaps, and this was the thought that kept Krath'nor awake in his private chambers, perhaps he had made a terrible mistake. The third message appeared 2 weeks after the second. You killed 3,000 of us. We have killed 1,845 of you. 1,155 to go. The number was, once again, perfectly accurate. And more disturbing than the count itself was the way it was presented. Not as a threat, not as a boast, just as a simple statement of fact. A running tally, a debt being paid in blood. Krath'nor called another council meeting. This time his voice carried less certainty. Options. Give me options to end this. Admiral Qex'rin looked uncomfortable. We could withdraw from human space. Establish a defensive perimeter and wait for them to reveal themselves. Withdrawal? Krath'nor's eyes blazed. You suggest we retreat from a species that has 200 ships against our 50,000? They may have more ships than we thought, Emperor, or their ships may be more advanced than our intelligence indicated. Or perhaps they have developed new weapons we have no defense against. Or perhaps, said Councillor Qex'rin, the only member of the council brave or foolish enough to speak harsh truths, perhaps the human told you exactly what would happen, and you chose not to listen. Every eye in the chamber turned to Qex'rin. The councillor was old, even by sulphury standards. His scales faded to a dull gray. But his mind was still sharp, and he alone among the Emperor's advisors had reviewed the transcript of Daniel Cross's speech. What are you suggesting? Krath'nor said dangerously. I am suggesting that we treated that human's words as empty bravado. But looking at what has transpired, I believe he was being completely honest with us. He was not threatening. He was not boasting. He was simply explaining what humanity would do, and we did not believe him. Because it was irrational. Krath'nor slammed his fist on his throne. No species behaves this way. No species sacrifices its own people for vengeance. Except humanity, Qex'rin interrupted quietly. That was his entire point, was it not? That humanity does not follow the patterns we expect. That they are, in his words, not reasonable. A heavy silence fell over the council. In that silence, a new message appeared on the main chamber display. You killed 3,000 of us. We have killed 2,998 of you. 2 to go. Krath'nor stared at the message. His breathing had become labored. His scales rippled with barely suppressed emotion. 2? He whispered. 2 more and they will have killed 3,000 of us. Exactly 3,000. The same number we killed on Epsilon 7. An eye for an eye, Qex'rin said quietly. Or more precisely, a life for a life. They are not trying to win a military victory, Emperor. They are executing a sentence. They are punishing us. And they will not stop until the debt is paid. This is insane, Krath'nor breathed. This is beyond insane. They are crippling their own chances of survival just to prove a point? Not to prove a point, Qex'rin corrected. To honor their dead. The human said it himself. We made it personal, and humans, apparently, take personal matters very seriously. The final message appeared exactly 12 hours later. You killed 3,000 of us. We have killed 3,000 of you. The debt is paid. Now the real war begins. And that was when, for the first time in 10,000 cycles of Solthari dominance, Emperor Krath'nor felt true fear. Because if this was humanity just paying a debt, just balancing the scales before the actual fighting started, then what in the name of all the ancient stars were they capable of when they actually tried to win? The Emperor slowly turned to look at the empty prosecution circle where Daniel Cross had stood. The human's words echoed in his memory. You will make us the 1,001st. Go ahead, try to exterminate us. But know this, Emperor. When you fail, when some fragment of humanity survives your best efforts, we will remember. For the first time, Krath'nor wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, humanity would not fail. And if they succeeded, if they actually survived what was coming, then the Solthari Empire faced something far more terrifying than mere defeat. They faced an enemy that would never ever forgive. The war room, aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, hummed with barely contained panic. I stood in my designated observation alcove, recording every word, every gesture, every sign of the growing chaos that had infected the Solthari command structure like a virus. Admiral Qex'rin stood before the tactical display, his forearms gesturing at the holographic representation of human space. Red markers indicated confirmed human attacks. There were hundreds of them now, scattered across dozens of systems like drops of blood on snow. The pattern has changed, Qex'rin said, his voice tight. After they completed their 3,000 kills, their tactics shifted. They are no longer targeting isolated ships. They are going after our infrastructure. Krath'nor leaned forward on his throne, which had been temporarily relocated to the war room. Explain. 17 supply depots have been destroyed in the past week, not captured. Destroyed. Completely annihilated with all supplies inside. They are not taking resources for themselves. They are denying them to us. That makes no tactical sense, General Qex'rin interjected. They need those supplies more than we do. Our logistics chain is vast. Theirs is practically non-existent. Unless, Councillor Qex'rin said quietly from his corner, they do not intend to engage us in traditional warfare at all. All eyes turned to the old sulfur ray. He had become something of an unofficial expert on human psychology, spending every waking moment reviewing every scrap of information available about Earth and its colonies. Continue, Krath'nor said. I have been studying human military history, Qex'rin said, pulling up a series of data files. Their history is extraordinarily violent, even by galactic standards. But what is most interesting is not how often they fought, but how they fought. Humans have a say. If you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics are terrible. What does that mean? Qex'rin asked. It means humans have no interest in fighting fairly. They have no concept of honorable combat. They do not line up their forces against yours and test strength against strength. Instead, they find every possible advantage, no matter how small, and they exploit it ruthlessly. Qex'rin zoomed in on a particular historical record. On their homeworld during what they call the Second World War, one nation was attempting to invade another. The defenders were vastly outnumbered and facing certain defeat. So they burned their own cities. They destroyed their own infrastructure. They left nothing but ash for the invaders to claim, and then they retreated into the wilderness and waged what they called guerrilla warfare for years. They destroyed their own cities. Krath'nor could not hide his disbelief. Rather than let them fall into enemy hands. Yes. They called it scorched earth tactics. If we cannot have it, you cannot have it either. Pure spite, given military doctrine. But they must have known that would cripple their own war effort, Qex'rin said. It did. Qex'rin agreed. They suffered tremendously. Millions died from starvation and exposure, but the invading army also suffered, unable to resupply from captured territory. Eventually the invasion collapsed. The defenders lost almost everything, but they won. A chill ran through my thermal systems. You think humanity is employing these scorched earth tactics against us? I think humanity is doing exactly what they told us they would do, Qex'rin said. They are making us pay for every meter of space we claim. They are turning their own territory into a graveyard that we must walk through. And every step deeper we go, every resource we commit, becomes another chain binding us to this conflict. Krath'nor stood abruptly. Then we will crush them quickly before they can implement these tactics fully. All fleets will converge on Earth itself. We will bypass their colonies and strike at their homeworld. Once Earth falls, their resistance will crumble. Emperor, Qex'rin said carefully, I would strongly advise against that course of action. Why? Give me one good reason why we should not end this farce immediately. Because that is exactly what they want you to do. The room fell silent. Krath'nor's scales flushed dark purple. Explain yourself, counselor, and choose your words carefully. Qex'rin pulled up another file. I found this buried in human cultural databases. It is from something they call the Art of War, written over 2,000 cycles ago by a human military philosopher named Sun Tzu. Listen to this passage. When the enemy advances, we retreat. When the enemy camps, we harass. When the enemy tires, we attack. When the enemy retreats, we pursue. He paused, letting the words sink in. Do you see? They have been following this doctrine since before they left their homeworld. And there is another passage that concerns me even more. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. We have been fighting them constantly. Qex'rin protested. Have we, Qex'rin asked? Or have we been fighting ghosts and shadows? When was the last time anyone saw an actual human warship? When was the last confirmed engagement where we could identify the enemy? The Daxlar checked his tactical logs. His expression grew troubled. 4 weeks ago, a minor skirmish near the outer marker. 3 human frigates engaged one of our scout groups, disabled 2 ships, then retreated before reinforcements arrived. 4 weeks, Qex'rin repeated. 4 weeks since we have seen their military forces, and yet our casualties continue to mount. Ships disappear. Supplies vanish. Soldiers die from unexplained causes. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see, on a battlefield we do not understand, for objectives that shift every time we think we have them cornered. Krath'nor sat back down heavily. What do you suggest, then? That we simply leave? Abandon this conquest and admit defeat to a species that barely has space travel? I suggest we consider the possibility that we have already lost, Qex'rin said quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Several council members hissed in outrage. General Vexter looked ready to challenge Qex'rin to ritual combat, but Krath'nor only closed his eye. Explain. We came here to conquer humanity, to add them to the Empire, to claim their territory and resources. But what have we actually claimed? Empty colonies, abandoned space stations, nothing of value. Meanwhile, we have lost over 3,000 soldiers, dozens of ships, and countless resources. We are not conquering humanity. We are being bled dry while chasing phantoms. Then where are they? Krath'nor's voice was barely a whisper. Where did an entire species disappear to? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the war room flickered. Just for a moment, then the main holographic display distorted, static running across its surface. When it cleared, a new image appeared. A human face, not Daniel Cross. This was a woman, perhaps 40 cycles old by human standards, with dark skin and graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a simple gray uniform with no insignia or rank markers. Her eyes were the color of deep space, cold and infinite. Good evening, Emperor Krath'nor, she said, her voice eerily calm. My name is Captain Ellen Zhang. I command the human vessel Silent Prayer. I am broadcasting this message to every ship in your fleet, simultaneously. I thought it was time we had a conversation. Krath'nor shot to his feet. How did you penetrate our secure communications? Ellen smiled. It was not a warm smile. The same way we have been penetrating everything else. You really should upgrade your encryption protocols. They are quite primitive by our standards. Impossible. Our systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No, Ellen corrected gently. They were the most advanced in the galaxy before you met us. Now they are approximately 300 cycles behind human standards. We have been inside your network since before you killed Daniel Cross. We have watched every meeting, read every tactical report, listened to every conversation. We know your fleet positions, your supply schedules, your strategic objectives. We know what you had for breakfast this morning, Emperor. I felt my sensory organs freeze in shock. If she was telling the truth, then the Sulthari military was completely compromised. Krath'nor's voice shook with rage. If you have such capabilities, why have you not used them to destroy us? Because, Ellen said, and her expression became something cold and terrible. We are not trying to destroy you quickly. We are trying to destroy you completely. There is a difference. She leaned forward slightly, and for a moment I could have sworn I saw Daniel Cross's face superimposed over hers. The same look, the same pity mixed with absolute certainty. You wanted to know where humanity went, Emperor. We are everywhere. We are in your computer systems. We are in your supply chains. We are in the spaces between your ships. We are in the thoughts that keep you awake at night. We did not run away. We simply stopped playing by your rules and started playing by ours. You are bluffing, Krath'nor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Let me demonstrate. Admiral Thaxlar, your command ship is the Fist of Empire, correct? But Thaxlar's scales went pale. How do you know that? Because I am currently inside its computer core. Would you like me to prove it? How about this? The lights on every ship in the Sulthari fleet flickered in perfect synchronization. Then they began to pulse in a pattern. On, off, on, off. 3 short flashes. 3 long flashes. 3 short flashes again. That is SOS in human Morse code, Ellen explained. An ancient distress signal. I thought it was appropriate. Your fleet is in distress, Emperor, even if you do not realize it yet. The lights returned to normal. Krath'nor looked around the war room at his advisors. They all looked as shaken as I felt. "What do you want?" Krath'nor asked finally. "Want? Nothing you can give us. You killed 3,000 of our people. We have balanced that debt. Now comes the interest." "Interest? You seem to have misunderstood human economics as badly as you misunderstood human psychology," Ellen said. "When you take something from us, we do not just want it back. We want compensation. We want damages. We want you to truly understand what you have done." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer but somehow more terrible. "Every single person you killed on Epsilon 7 had a story, had dreams, had people who loved them. Maria Santos was 7 years old. She wanted to be a pilot. She had just learned to play the violin. Her parents sent us a recording of her last recital. Would you like to hear it, Emperor? Would you like to hear the music that will never be played again because you decided to make an example of her colony?" Krath'nor said nothing. What could he say? "Or perhaps you would like to hear about James Kim. He was 63 years old. He had just become a grandfather for the first time. His granddaughter was 2 months old when you killed him. Her name is Lisa. She will grow up never knowing her grandfather, never hearing his stories, never feeling his arms around her. You took that from her, Emperor, from a 2-month-old child." Ellen's voice remained calm, but each word struck like a physical blow. "I could go on. I could tell you about all 3,000 of them, their names, their ages, their hopes, their fears, their final moments. But I do not think you actually care, do you? They were just numbers to you. Acceptable casualties in your grand conquest." "They were enemies of the Empire," Krath'nor said, but his voice was hollow. "They were civilians. They were shopkeepers and teachers and farmers and children. They were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were just people who refused to pay tribute to a government they did not choose and did not want." Ellen leaned back, and her expression became businesslike again. "So here is what happens next, Emperor. You have a choice. The first option is that you continue this war. You push deeper into human space. You hunt for our hidden colonies. You waste resources trying to find us. And every day, every hour, every minute we will be taking pieces out of your fleet. Not enough to trigger a major response. Just enough to keep the fear alive. Your soldiers will never sleep peacefully again. They will never trust their own ships. They will jump at shadows and see enemies in every corner. And slowly, gradually, your mighty empire will bleed itself dry trying to crush an enemy it cannot see or touch." She held up a finger. "Option 2. You withdraw from human space immediately. You leave our territory. You never come back. And in exchange, we will let you leave. We will not pursue you. We will not sabotage your retreat. We will simply let you go. And we will never speak of this again." "And if we choose option 2, Krath'nor asked, "then we forget this ever happened. We go back to being insignificant shopkeepers and merchants. We stay in our corner of the galaxy, and you stay in yours. We will trade if you wish, or we will ignore each other. But the war ends, and both our species survive." "That is it? You would simply let us go after we killed 3,000 of your people?" Ellen's smile returned, but it was sad this time. "Oh, Emperor, you really do not understand us at all, do you? We do not want your empire. We do not want your territory. We do not want to rule over you. We just want you to leave us alone. That is all we have ever wanted. The difference between us and every other species you have conquered is that we are willing to burn everything we have built, sacrifice everything we own, and spend the next 1,000 cycles in hiding if that is what it takes to make you understand that simple truth." She paused, and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Leave us alone. That is all we ask. But if you cannot do that, if you insist on continuing this war, then we will show you things that will make you wish you had never heard the word human. We will introduce you to concepts like mutually assured destruction. We will teach you about Prytic victories. We will demonstrate what happens when a species decides that if they cannot win, they will make absolutely certain that everyone loses." The transmission flickered, but before it cut out, Ellen said one more thing. "You have 72 hours to decide, Emperor. After that, the silent prayer and her sister ships will stop playing defense and start playing offense. And trust me when I say you do not want to see what human offense looks like. Daniel tried to warn you. I am trying to warn you. Please, for the sake of your people, listen this time." The transmission ended, The war room fell into absolute silence. I watched as Krath'nor slowly sat back down, his massive frame seeming somehow smaller than before. "Counselor Qex'rin," he said finally, "your honest assessment." The old Solthari took a long moment before responding. "She is not bluffing. Not about their capabilities. Not about their resolve. Not about what they will do if we continue. Emperor, I have spent the last weeks studying humanity. They are not like us. They are not like anyone we have ever encountered. And I believe with absolute certainty that if we do not accept their terms, they will make good on every single threat." "We would be admitting defeat," General Vextar protested. "The Empire has never retreated from a weaker opponent. The shame would be unbearable." "The shame of retreat," Qex'rin said softly, "or the reality of extinction. Those are our choices." Krath'nor looked around the room at his advisors, his generals, his counselors. Then he looked at me, still recording silently from my alcove. "Fourth Speaker Veshkali," he said, and I startled at being addressed directly. "You have recorded everything. When future cycles look back on this moment, what will the historical record show?" I considered my words carefully. "It will show that the Solthari Empire encountered a species unlike any other. A species that refused to follow the patterns we expected. A species that valued their autonomy more than their survival. And it will show that we had a choice between wisdom and pride. And which did we choose? That, Emperor, depends on what you decide in the next 72 hours. Krath'nor closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something fundamental had changed in his expression. The arrogance was gone. The absolute certainty of his superiority had been replaced with something that looked almost like humility. "I have ruled for 300 cycles," he said quietly. "I have conquered 47 star systems. I have brought peace to billions through the strength of Solthari law, and in all that time I have never once doubted that we were bringing order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. But now I wonder if perhaps we have been the barbarians all along." He stood and walked to the tactical display, looking at the scattered red markers, indicating human attacks. "They are not fighting to conquer us. They are fighting to be left alone. And they are willing to sacrifice everything for that simple goal." "What kind of species does that?" "A free species," Qex'rin said. "One that has never known the yoke of empire. One that would rather die than submit." Krath'nor turned to face his council. "I am going to ask each of you a question, and I want honest answers. Do you believe we can defeat humanity in this war?" Admiral Thexlar spoke first. "From a purely military standpoint, yes. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior resources. In any conventional war we would win eventually. But this is not a conventional war," Krath'nor said. "No, Emperor, it is not. And I do not know how to fight an unconventional war against an enemy who sees our advantages and chooses to ignore them." General Vextar was next. "I believe we could achieve a military victory, but I do not believe we could hold what we conquered. The humans would never stop resisting. We would be fighting this war for cycles, possibly centuries. And the cost in Solthari lives would be catastrophic." Counselor Qex'rin simply said, "No, we cannot defeat them. Not in any meaningful sense. We can kill them, certainly. We can destroy their ships and burn their colonies, but we cannot make them submit. And a war without the possibility of submission is not a war. It is mutual suicide." Krath'nor looked at me again. "And you, fourth speaker? What does the historical record suggest?" I accessed my databases, pulling up files on every major conflict in recorded galactic history. In every successful conquest, the subjugated species eventually accepted their new reality. They integrated into the empire, adopted the dominant culture, and became part of the system. But there are also records of failed conquests. Species that fought to extinction rather than submit. And in every single case, the conquering empire was weakened, sometimes fatally, by the cost of the Pyrrhic victory. "So you are saying we have two choices: accept their terms and retreat with our strength intact, or destroy them and cripple ourselves in the process?" "Yes, Emperor. Those appear to be the only outcomes." Krath'nor was silent for a long time. Finally he spoke. "I am going to tell you something that must never leave this room. When I was young, before I became emperor, I served as a soldier in the frontier wars. I killed many beings. I thought I was bringing civilization, but I remember one incident. A small colony, barely 50 individuals, refused to surrender. We had 10,000 soldiers. They had nothing but improvised weapons and determination. He paused, his voice thick with old memory. They fought for 6 days. Every single one of them died. Men, women, even the children old enough to hold a weapon. And when it was over, when we stood among the corpses, I remember thinking that we had not won anything. We had just destroyed something we would never understand. And I swore that if I ever had the power, I would find a better way. He looked around the room at his shocked advisors. I became emperor. I had the power, but I forgot that oath. I became exactly the kind of tyrant I once swore to never be. And now, faced with a species that is everything that colony was but multiplied 1,000,000,000 times over, I have a chance to choose differently. He took a deep breath and straightened to his full height. Send a response to Captain Ellen Zhang. Inform her that the Sulthari Empire accepts her terms. All fleets are to withdraw from human space immediately. We will establish a neutral zone between our territories and will not cross it without invitation. And we will pay reparations to the families of those killed on Epsilon 7. The room erupted in protests. Vixtar looked ready to commit treason on the spot, but Krath'nor raised one massive hand and silence fell. This is not a request. This is not a discussion. This is an imperial decree. We are leaving human space. We are ending this war. And we are going to learn a lesson that apparently no other species in the galaxy has managed to teach us. What lesson, Emperor? I asked. That strength is not the same as power. That military might does not equal wisdom. And that sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when not to fight. The transmission was sent within the hour. Captain Ellen Zhang's response came back almost immediately. Understood, Emperor Krath'nor. Your fleets may begin withdrawal at any time. We will monitor your movements, but will not interfere.
Thank you
for choosing wisdom over pride. Perhaps in time our seas can meet again under better circumstances. And then in a touch that I thought was either brilliant or cruel or perhaps both, she added one final line. Daniel Cross would have been pleased. He never wanted this war. He just wanted you to understand what you were starting. Rest well, Emperor. You have made the right choice. The withdrawal took 3 weeks. Massive Sulthari fleets that had entered human space with such confidence retreated in orderly but decidedly hasty fashion. Not a single human ship was seen during the entire process. They remained hidden, watching from wherever they had concealed themselves, making sure we kept our word. But as the last Sulthari vessel crossed back into Imperial space, something remarkable happened. Every communication display in every ship simultaneously received a message. Not threatening this time, just a simple text file, containing 3,000 names, the names of everyone who had died on Epsilon 7, each one listed with their age, their occupation, a brief description of who they were. Maria Santos, age 7, student, loved music and drawing. James Kim, age 63, retired engineer grandfather. The list went on and on and on. At the bottom of the file was a single sentence. Remember them. They were not numbers. They were not statistics. They were people. Just like you. I saved that file to my permanent archives. I look at it sometimes when I need to remind myself of what I witnessed, because that was the moment I truly understood what made humanity different. They had won their war not through superior firepower or brilliant tactics. They had won by making us see them as people rather than obstacles. They had forced us to confront the reality of what we had done, what we were willing to do, and what it would cost to continue doing it. 3 months after the withdrawal, I was reassigned to the diplomatic corps. My first task was to begin preliminary discussions with human representatives about establishing formal relations between our species. The irony was not lost on me. I met with Captain Ellen Zhang in a neutral space station at the border between our territories. She was exactly as she had appeared in her transmission. Calm, professional, utterly in control, fourth speaker Vashkali. She greeted me with a small nod. I have read your historical records of our conflict. They are very thorough. It is my function to record and preserve, I said, though I confess this was the most unusual conflict I have ever documented. Unusual from your perspective, Ellen said. From ours, it was tragically familiar. Humanity has fought versions of this war thousands of times on our own world. The strong trying to dominate the weak refusing to submit, the strong learning eventually that force alone cannot create peace.
Daniel Cross,
I said. Did he know? Did he know how this would end when he stood before the Emperor? Ellen smiled sadly. Daniel volunteered for that mission. He knew he would not survive it, but he also knew that sometimes the only way to prevent a war is to show your enemy exactly what that war would look like. He gave his life to give you a warning. I just wish you had listened to him before 3,000 more had to die. So do I admitted. For what it is worth, I am sorry. I was there. I recorded his speech. I could have spoken up, could have suggested caution, but I did not. You are speaking up now, Ellen said. That is something. We talked for hours that day about our species, our histories, our hopes for the future. And slowly, carefully, we began to build something that looked almost like understanding. 6 months after our first meeting, Emperor Krath'nor made an unprecedented journey. He traveled to human space, to Earth itself, with only a small security detail. He stood before a memorial that humanity had built for those who died on Epsilon 7, 3,000 names carved into black stone, gleaming in Earth's sunlight. And the Emperor who had ruled for 3 centuries, who had never shown weakness, who had conquered 47 systems, knelt before that memorial and wept. I was there to record it. It is in my archives for future generations to see. The moment when the Salthari Empire learned humility from a species they had thought to crush. Krath'nor placed a hand on the memorial and spoke. His voice broadcast across the entire human network. I am Krath'nor, Emperor of the Salthari. I came here to conquer you. Instead, you conquered me. Not with weapons, not with force, but with the simple truth that every life matters. Every name on this stone was a person. Every person had value, and I took that from them, from you. I cannot undo what I have done. I cannot bring them back, but I can promise that the Salthari Empire will never again make the mistake of treating sentient life as expendable. He stood and turned to face the human delegation that had gathered. You taught us something that 10,000 cycles of dominance never did. You taught us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose not to. You could have annihilated my fleets when you had us infiltrated. You could have crippled the Empire, but you chose mercy. You chose to give us a chance to choose differently, and for that humanity has my eternal gratitude and respect. Daniel Cross's name was the first one on the memorial. As Krath'nor placed his hand on it, a holographic display activated, showing a recording. It was Daniel's last words, the ones he had spoken before the firing squad. Tell them we could have been friends. Tell them we could have been allies. Tell them they made a choice, and now they will live with the consequences, or die with them. Either way works for us. Krath'nor looked at the recording and said quietly enough that only those closest could hear, we choose to live with them. We choose to be friends. We choose to be allies. If you will have us. A figure stepped forward from the human delegation, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. My name is Thomas Cross. Daniel was my son. And yes, Emperor Krath'nor. Yes, we will have you. That is what my son would have wanted. That is what we all want. Not vengeance, not domination, just peace. The two beings, representatives of species that had been at war mere months ago, embraced. And in that moment, something new was born. Not an empire, not a conquest, but a partnership between species who had learned to respect each other through fire and blood, and ultimately, through choice. That was 5 cycles ago. Today I serve as the Salthari ambassador to Earth. I live among humans, learn their customs, share their meals, attend their ceremonies, and every day I am reminded of how close we came to destroying something precious. Humanity never revealed exactly how they infiltrated our systems, never explained where they hid their populations during the war, never disclosed their full capabilities. And when I asked Ellen about it once, she just smiled and said, some secrets are better kept, just in case someone else needs to learn the same lesson someday. But I think I understand now. Humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute certainty that freedom was worth any price, their willingness to sacrifice everything rather than submit, their ability to look at impossible odds and say, not today, and perhaps most importantly their capacity to forgive even after being given every reason to seek vengeance. I am Qex'rin, first speaker of the Galactic Congress now. I was promoted after my advocacy for peaceful coexistence with humanity changed Salthari policy at the highest levels. And I make sure that every species that joins the Congress hears the story of what happened when the Salthari Empire tried to conquer humanity. I tell them about Daniel Cross, who gave his life to deliver a warning. I tell them about Captain Ellen Zhang, who showed mercy when she could have chosen destruction. I tell them about Emperor Krath'nor, who learned that true strength means knowing when not to fight. And I tell them about the 3,000 names on a memorial on Earth, and what those names taught us about the value of every single life. Some species listen, some do not, but those who do not, well, they usually learn eventually, because humanity is still out there, still trading, still exploring, still being the slightly chaotic, unpredictable, absolutely terrifying species that refuses to follow anyone's rules but their own, and the galaxy is better for it. I end my historical record with a quote from Daniel Cross, words that have become famous across 100 systems. We could have been friends. We are friends now, Daniel, your species and mine. It cost us dearly to reach this point, but we made it. And I like to think that somewhere, somehow, you know that your warning was not in vain. You told us we would learn what humans were capable of. And we did. We learned that humans are capable of mercy, of forgiveness, of choosing peace, even when war would be easier. Thank you for that lesson. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for showing us a better way. The debt is paid. The war is over. And now, finally, we can build something worth building. Together.